BitShares is a world-class blockchain like Bitcoin with a digital currency platform boasting enterprise-level scalability and throughput with separations of power and self-governance baked in. Need the power of a blockchain with the stability of a dollar? We invented it and tested it for 3 years. Want to make a loyalty token, coupon, or shares in your business? We have you covered. Wish to add world-class development? This tech can fund your work. Whether for an everyday entrepreneur or computer-savvy code guru, BitShares provides tools to empower a world of unapologetic innovators to wield and share value with a level of freedom once thought impossible. Meet a community of such innovators every Friday at 2 p.m. UTC, led by Chris Herring and Fuzzy, to play a role in the evolution and advancement of this state-of-the-art project. Welcome to the BitShares revolution. You just leveled up. Welcome everyone to another Beyond Bitcoin BitShares Hangout. Today is Friday, June 23rd, 2017, and this is episode 25. Now this is what we call the BitShares Open Source Agenda Hangout, and I post this every week starting as of last week to enable people to bring up different topics, questions, concerns, or hopefully the biggest thing that we would like to start moving into with this is a little bit less away from that stuff, though it'll be there for anybody who wants to use it. But for people who have worker proposals and proposals for changing any aspect within the BitShares ecosystem, we have a lot of funding for development to be done. We have come together and talked for quite some time about getting things done in the ecosystem. And now that we have new tools that have been brought online, namely whale shares, I'm able to start leveraging what I have and the community of over 600 people that we've built in 2 weeks to really start paying out to those individuals who otherwise might have had a concern with paying to get a worker proposal in the ecosystem. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be urging everybody to start looking at. But we'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. I want to start out with the agenda today. And there have been people who've been paid out money on the Steemit platform under the BitShares Hangout open source agenda thread for participating in the discussion. And the one that is going to be joining up today to talk about his worker proposal is going to be Talkinator, and he's going to be talking about a worker proposal for getting BitShares to work with EOS. So that's going to be one of the top agenda items. But before we get into that today, I'm going to also cover a little bit about what this new format is and why we're changing from the old. So with that said, does anybody have anything that they would like to add before we get started today?
Cut out there briefly, Fuzzy. Why don't you repeat that last bit?
Which part? Where did I cut out?
Hard to explain it. Somebody else help me here.
You basically said that why we're changing, and then there was a gap.
We are changing formats, and I would like to, before we get into Talkinator's proposal today, explain to people a little bit of why. There are many factors that are going into this evolution, but I definitely want to bring this to the community and let everybody know about it before we get started on Talkinators. I've been talking to Talkinator about some other things behind the scenes, but I'll let him choose whether he wants to talk about that stuff in addition today. And of course, I will let everybody know, please consider going to the BitShares Hangout thread and posting your worker proposals, your change proposals, any BSIPs, which are BitShares improvement proposals, anything that you would like to do, maybe even witnesses if you're wanting a witness. These are the types of things that you can come to these Hangouts to accomplish and to try to get people to look at. And I would urge everybody to reach out to your proxy, ask them to join these Hangouts, or consider listening to the Hangouts, because this is a place that through the storms, through the hard times and the best times, we've been here. And I believe that we're going to kind of have to be here over time. Experience is kind of showing me that we have to start doing and making changes instead of being so much a blank slate. So with that said, I'd like to start today just by going over the format change. Because the format used to be where you could talk about any topic specifically, and that was pretty much the main thing that it was here for. But the topics, they grow also into things that we might not be in the best position to always give information on, and a lot of it has become speculation with things. And excuse me.
With regard to your format, Fuzzy, I think what I'm sensing here is that it's moving more towards the direction of worker proposals and getting some shit done. And so in that regard, I think it's a great thing. It does have the potential. It'll be a difficult balancing act for you to be able to, because it could be very technical when you talk about worker proposals and getting things done in the blockchain and the technical things that are required there. It can bog people down where they're not so interested and tuning in because of that. I think it's going to be a great challenge for you to do it, and I'm all behind it.
Well, I will urge everybody. This is part of our governance structure, right? We have proxy, and yes, they do things, and a lot of them are very busy. But it's important that we show that our community is alive. I go on Steemit, for instance, and Ethereum's community is ahead of BitShares on there. There's no reason for that. We're the reason why Steem exists. We should be at the top. We should be up there. We have $400 million plus to give out to workers. We've talked for months, literally months, about just getting a coin market cap or something up, something done. And we talk ourselves to death. So yes, it's going to be hard to get and reward doers, and that is always a problem. However, I want to make it very clear to everyone here that the community that we're forming already around whale shares is growing by leaps and bounds by the day. I have lots of money I can pass out to people who can help, and I don't have to worry about politics. I don't have to worry about any of that. I just worry about what I like to do, which is build communities to build things. And it will be hard. I look forward to it. So yes. And I will say, for those of you who are here from the Whale Shares community this morning, I know it's early, and thank you for joining up. But with that said, what we're going to start doing is really focusing on this. And I'm going to be paying out Whale Shares to people. A 50% upvote from the account with Whale Shares right now gives out about $150 on Steem. Makes your post trend, gets you in the eyes of many other people. And if you add the Beyond Bitcoin tag, the BitShares tag, there are a lot of people who respect us because we've done what others have said they're going to do. And because of that, you gain a lot of eyeballs. So I urge you all to consider utilizing this platform and what we consistently are building to really kind of enable yourself to do things that maybe you weren't able to do with the funding mechanisms that are currently in place in the BitShares ecosystem. And that will always be there. But I urge you to consider joining up and getting your proxies to pay attention to this, and getting your proxies to join up if they can, to help those individuals who are going to be joining up. Because I'm going to start a worker proposal myself, and I'm going to work to get a coin market cap ad to say that we are hiring. Okay, I'm not going to go through big meetings. I'm not going to go through people saying I can or can't. I'm just going to do the worker proposal, and I'm going to come here every week and tell people about it. And I urge you, if you care about BitShares, to think about something you care about and ask the community that you've been supporting for all this time to help you build what you need to build and what they need to build. They have a lot of things in there. And of course, there are certain aspects that are going to be more technical than others. You can get paid very well for doing this. So I urge you guys to all consider doing it. Consider people who aren't getting paid, who deserve it especially, and reaching out to them and telling them, hey, you're already doing this. Maybe we can get you a worker proposal. And those people who do this I'm going to be rewarding you handsomely over time. So I'm just going to I'm going to leave it at that. I haven't opened up all of the avenues and all the different things I've got. I've only got one token right now. We're going to be opening a lot more. Check out whaleshares.net, guys. That's where the magic's going to start happening. And I'll also say, this is a good time for anybody to bring up whatever they would like to bring up about this subject.
I think one thing to follow up on what you're bringing up regarding worker proposals is due to the fortunate work, due to the work which I'm grateful about that SVK recently introduced into the wallet is to submit worker proposals. So that will hopefully also make it easier for a wider variety of people to submit.
Great point. And if it isn't, whale shares are worth about $1.50 each right now, and I can hand them out like candy if I need to somebody who does build an interface that makes it easy to put these worker proposals in. Literally thousands of dollars can be in your pockets, and fame that makes it so everybody else upvotes you for thousands of dollars. But if you don't want to use it, don't. I've tried to be humble about this stuff, but I'm going to start selling what we've got. Use it, people. Use it. That's why it is. Ask Crypto Hippie. He's here from Purity. How have whale shares been helping your project get paid, man? But honestly, Talkinator, you're 100% right. We need to support this stuff. We need to support SVK. I know that he's got a worker proposal that he at least had, unless it's changed recently. Does he still have a worker proposal?
The last time I checked, no, I think it had expired. It expired naturally. And so I think he was not necessarily available, but I think he might become available shortly. So that's something to consider.
Do you think that we could get a little team of people to talk him into coming to get a worker proposal again? And I will pay you guys a bounty.
I think, sure. I think talking with him about it will be easy. The question, I think the harder part will be his availability.
We'll need to see what he's getting paid. And this is the type of things that are going to start happening, right? The people who busted their butts and have done a lot of work, like SVK is one of them. He's really highly respected, trusted in the space, and now he's going to be starting to be offered a lot of money.
Sure.
And you get what you pay for, guys. So always keep in mind, we have to make sure that we're paying people who have built up trust, but paying them well, because that trust is so damn important. And once you lose it, or once you lose those people, it's hard to find replacements for that.
Yeah, I agree. And is actually tied for something that I was really considering as submitting to discuss today, but I think I'll delay that discussion perhaps for next week about another worker.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the topic that we're currently on, or should we move on to Talkinator? Because you do have a worker proposal that you wanted to talk about, and I mean, you know where I stand on it, Taco. So
it's a perfect segue.
I should probably shut up. Go ahead.
I say it's a perfect segue.
Sounds good. Okay, so I was actually reviewing various proposals, many of which have already been out there, and a couple of several that I thought of myself. And just to keep it pertinent for what we can discuss in today's 1 hour or remaining 45 minutes, is I highlighted one which I thought was highest priority based on largely, I think, what is going on with this related project. So the related project is EOS, and the question that I'm bringing up here is a proposal to prepare a report on possible integration with EOS. And I highlighted it briefly in a comment to today's Hangout, and I can discuss it abruptly here. Just to put up front, almost all of these ideas are not my own, so they shouldn't be credited to me. To my knowledge, they are largely belonging to a discussion between Xerox and El Mato. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the reason I think for the integration is in terms of timeline is because there's a lot of activity going on in EOS, and there's also fundraising going on at this time. And considering because of those issues, I thought this would be highest priority. So roughly speaking, there are approximately 4 general ideas for how to integrate with EOS. And perhaps open for discussion is possibly why would we want to do that. But so I'm just going to put it out there quickly. Would anybody like to discuss the why?
I think it's always something pertinent because, at least from my standpoint, you never know when a new person is coming in to listen. So briefly visiting that when we have the time, which we do today, probably isn't a bad idea if that's okay with you.
Sure. So I'll highlight what I think is, I'll highlight certain points, and then if I'm missing anything or anything important, please, everybody chime in. One of the reasons for consideration with EOS is because it is a related technology, and perhaps at this point, it's going to be a smart contracts blockchain platform, and very possibly with even higher throughput capacity in general. It depends on the operations, but it's going to have a high throughput capacity. And to do a direct comparison with BitShares is a little fuzzy because it assumes certain things about what's up for operating on the system. But roughly, it's going to be a high throughput capacity with smart contracts. So one of the issues, and that's a little bit of the why, and also it's getting a lot of visibility. That's one thing. And a second why. And a second why is because there can be many other systems operating on the EOS platform, the possibility of integrating a financial decentralized exchange with these other platforms is very interesting. So you could have another DApp, a distributed application that is in charge of almost anything you can imagine. So let's imagine renting a car, for example. You could have that system integrated with perhaps your financial system on the BitShares DApp. And because of that integration, the whole EOS platform becomes very interesting in terms of possibilities about what can be done across dApps. So I think that is some of the why. Perhaps somebody else would like to highlight something else?
I'll just say that one thing that I love to highlight is that if BitShares also finds a way of having ownership stake early on, and I know we've covered this in the past, but if BitShares ends up having ownership stake in EOS, not only does it kind of become the default DEX for the dApps on EOS, it's also going to gain essentially free transaction fees, or the potential to have extremely low transactions, more like what an actual enterprise exchange.
Could you repeat that? I think you said you fell out. I heard extremely low something.
Transaction fees.
Okay.
That would actually be on par, or could get us on par with the various enterprise level exchanges, that centralized exchanges that exist today, potentially with fees.
Right. So, assuming that there are no other whys that people might want to discuss. So, and also I'll put in one caveat that I think a couple of people might bring in here in terms of the why. EOS is still young. It has not been fully fleshed out. So an argument can be made that it is a bit too early to be discussing integration with EOS. And I think that's a fair criticism. But really, what I'm just highlighting today is not actually to do integration, but rather to just perhaps have some in the community prepare a report about possible technical methods for integrating with EOS, at least based on what is currently known. And two, what are some of the benefits and cons, both in terms of financing any particular technical endeavor, and also with and also who might finance it too. So I think this is really just kind of to prepare a relatively short report to discuss possibilities for possible future action.
One thing that I think would be prudent, and you probably already thought about this, Talkinator, I suspect, and that is just simply reaching out to Bytemaster or anybody else that you have contact with in the EOS community to begin to establish a dialogue along these lines, because the relationship between their development staff and anybody that's interested, like yourself, that could be a developer in that endeavor, is pretty important to foster pretty early.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there are a couple of feelers we can put out, and I think definitely follow up on what you're saying. Yeah.
So is this a worker proposal for creating the BSIP, like doing the research prior to, implementation? Yes.
I think yes. I think that's roughly correct.
Cool. It sounds good. I'd also post it to like Steam. I wrote up my BSIP 19 and it got paid like $200. So it's like that helps fund the research itself as well,
Yes, excellent. Yes, I remember. I actually had it in my notes. Let me see if I can just step so others can see.
I see G Chicken commented that Stan has commented in the Telegram that Xerox and Dan have been discussing integration. So that's good because Xerox is obviously a very strong member of our community here.
Yeah, I think I know that I've talked to Xerox about it. I've talked to Dan about it. Dan actually was one of the people who mentioned BitShares 3.0 right when EOS came out, which was around the time whenever I was like, all right. Big question mark. Dan, what about that? Let's dig into that a little bit. And we have an EOS token that's on BitShares. I don't know where it came from. But I think that all of this stuff, it just makes sense. And I think regardless, people are seeing. The question is, if the community will go with it.
Dan has a habit of building the horse first and then the cart next.
Yeah, but then at the same time, we have to admit the cart kind of goes, oh, I need to build myself, and everybody comes together to build the cart because they have to. It's kind of a free market thing that happens every time, and people complain, but it gets done.
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to in Teleguide, but if it basically boils down to building the tech and then later coming along and marketing it to a potential audience, I don't think that'll happen with EOS because he's a part of a team. And there's a huge aspect of that team which is very marketing focused.
No, it's quite simple. He's going to focus on building EOS first, which he obviously should do, and then the BitShares integration would be the cart, which comes next.
Okay, so real quick, this is fun, and this is a nice kind of side track, but I do want to kind of bring us back to the point of what Talkinator was bringing up as far as the EOS integration, the BitShares improvement proposal. And I wanted to kind of also bring up what Custom Miner said, which is a great point here. And I want to use this as a teaching moment as far as how we can use the tools that I'm at least building here to help. BitShares, everything that helps BitShares is eventually going to help Steam. So I have no qualms helping and using what I've got in Steam. And what Custom Miner said is a perfect example. $200 for making a post, right? And that's going to start happening more and more, Custom Miner. You're going to see the more and more because you keep doing it. And people are going to start questioning, how did he make so much money? It's because you keep at it and you keep doing it. So for those of you who are wondering, how do I make a lot of money in this space? It's really, really simple. Persistent value and don't stop. You can do it in your own way, and we all have our own ways. We all have our own perspectives of whether, somebody's providing it or not. But try your best and you will have people who support you. And we can pay easily just between both of my accounts. And that's not even including all of you if you guys pitch in. We can easily pay somebody $300 or $400. That's actually possible just for posting a BSIP that has been well thought out. And if you bring that stuff to me, and you consistently are showing it, you're most likely going to end up getting funded to have teams who write these things and help you. That's the model I'm trying to build. So the people who stand up and lead are going to be rewarded for leading. You're not going to have to pay out of pocket. You're going to earn reputation and you're going to earn money. And if BitShares doesn't help pay for all that stuff, then I can at the very least, pay with Steam. And if we're building value for both, nobody's going to complain. So with that said, the EOS worker proposal BSIP, how do you see that rolling out, Talkinator? I mean, do you think that this is something that should have different stages, or is it something that's going to be relatively simple? How much work if you were to kind of guesstimate, how much work do you think we would need on a BSIP like this?
As a quick estimate,
yeah, of course.
As a quick estimate, I think we would want, in terms of man hours, I think we're talking in the ballpark of 5 to 20 hours per person, where I think we want to have at least 3 heads. So I guess I'm saying about 15 to 60 hours of man hours.
So let's say 60. Let's always say the top price,
Okay.
just so we know that we always have the money figured out for it. If if we end up having a lot of extra in the end, that's even better, right? At least this way we're not pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised.
Sure. And I think this would be like for a first version, based on what is known today.
Okay. Well, 60 hours, let's say times what, $60 an hour? How much an hour do you think would be fair for somebody who's really skilled in this?
That's always fuzzy. But let's go with your number for the moment.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, $3,600 for a worker proposal, and we can do this in multiple ways. We can cut up these Hangouts, post that stuff too, or have them post them. I think we can get $3,600 for a very well done worker proposal, but it'll probably be over time. People would have to, post stuff and updates on things and discuss it. But yeah, I think we could pretty easily get there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Would you be able to kind of oversee that, and then we can get you paid as well?
Sure, I can at least corral it. Yeah.
I mean, we can use the Steam-backed dollars earned from this Hangout too. Like, I have no qualms. We're building here.
Yeah.
So
and also briefly, I can also briefly highlight what are kind of, as I see, the 3 general approaches that are being considered right now. And there might be 4, but I think 3 general ones. Would now be a good time?
Well, this would be the perfect time. You are the expert speaker here. So
okay. So the first idea that we talked about here, and I'll paste it. I'll paste the 3 ideas and then talk about them. So the first idea is, which is listed in text as modify the BitShares block header and do sidechain with EOS. The rough idea is that you maintain both blockchains separate on their own. You have shares as BitShares on one side, and then EOS as a separate blockchain. And then BitShares specifically would be modified in a small way that would allow it to be able to handle certain operations in synchronization with EOS. That's the broad general idea. It would not be a complete integration, and there's some details, but it would have a lot of functionality by just enabling that. That's idea number 1. The second idea is to do a complete port of BitShares and just completely move it over and have it as a dApp within EOS. So then there would just be one blockchain, and one of the dApps on EOS would be BitShares. The third idea would be, and even here there are kind of 2 ideas, but the rough idea is to somehow significantly enhance BitShares based on what was learned from EOS. And these 2 ideas range from anywhere of looking at EOS and doing significant upgrades to BitShares, all the way to maybe just having a fork of EOS and just having BitShares operating on a separate EOS chain. There are pros and cons to each of these, but those are roughly the 3 broad ideas. And then there was a 4th idea that was introduced, which is possibly making use of 2 of the other ideas. But at a quick high level, those are the broad ideas that are possibly being considered.
And it seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong here, it seems like this is going from easiest to most difficult.
I think certainly number 1, where we just modify BitShares block header, is the easiest. Number 2, I think, is the hardest, which is a full port of bits over to EOS. Although, if we compare it to number 3, which is an upgrade, that in itself also is not necessarily easy, depending on what kind of upgrade we're talking about.
Okay, fair enough. So there's different kinds of upgrades, the ways of upgrading this architecture too, like sub categories underneath that almost.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, you see, like these are the types of things that would be very helpful to get documentation on and put this stuff on a blockchain. It's thank you, Talkinator. This is the type of technical expertise and clarity that we need to bring to the discussion for for anybody who doesn't quite understand it. Most people aren't devs, so I greatly appreciate the laying of them out. What do you think? Are you partial to any of them personally after hearing all the discussion?
Currently, based on my limited knowledge, I think I would lean towards one because possibly with a small amount of work we can get a decent amount of benefit, and also because EOS is still being fleshed out. And also, there's one other consideration about maintaining possibly a separate transaction, a separate blockchain. Is as a separate blockchain, the BitShares, at least at this stage of development of EOS, based on my understanding, is that BitShares blockchain is still, at the moment, much faster for the type of operations that it performs. So, based on that, and the relatively little amount of work comparison to the other options, I think we get a good bang for the buck for option one, based on what I know at the moment.
I think that's one of the fastest things to implement at this point too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And the other steps, this doesn't really hinder any of the other steps if either of those want to be taken later.
Yeah, that's right. And also, in a way, it kind of enables the other steps as well, because it increases our familiarity with that, with EOS.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way of going. I mean, the easiest way, especially at a time when we don't have all the answers to a lot of questions. It gives us the connection, but at the same time keeps us safely disconnected, if that makes any sense.
What is your thoughts about the Ren scripting? My impression from reading ByteMaster's blog recently is that on Steam is that he's moving away from Ren in favor of WebAssembly.
I don't have any educated insight on that. I'm ignorant of both.
I'm pretty ignorant on both either. I've learned only what I've gotten from reading ByteMaster's posts, but he seemed to be pretty much moving in the direction of WebAssembly over Ren, even though he has very, very much bullish on Ren originally. I think he's moving away from that perspective now.
Okay, that's interesting.
And what's the difference between the two?
Well, I can tell you
primarily.
Sorry, in terms of Ren, the issues that he ran into was in regards to the real-time compiling that Ren requires in its processing, and that was causing a limitation in the transaction capabilities he was hoping for. Instead, the great thing about WebAssembly is that you can use lots of other languages within it. It is more adept to C++ type of language, which of course we all know is what he's most proficient. And so overall, he was able to also get the throughput he was looking for. So Ren looks like it's out of the picture. Yeah, it just worked.
Well, I'm glad to hear that these he's adapted to the situation and why. Thanks for the insight. And now, of course, this is Jonathan Bahai from Peer Plays, who's just talked up. He's one of the committee members and has a witness. You still have a witness going, right?
I did, but it is not active at the moment. So if you want to vote for data security node, it would be most welcome.
Yeah. So how does this play into or make any different things that we need to consider as far as BitShares? I would imagine that this would make it easier, since it would probably be more friendly to C++, which is what BitShares is written in, right? Or am I completely overreaching on that?
Well, Jonathan, you nailed the technical thing. I didn't remember those details, but you're absolutely right. You recollected my memory that it was the issue of compilation of the Ren that was the bottleneck that he discovered. So WebAssembly also, as you also mentioned, that it's really good for being language agnostic, and that's very good for extensibility it's great because there's so many developers that can make use of it that way.
So this actually brings up something that I've tried to express a number of times. I think we're in the cusp of actually an ICO for EOS, and it's got a year-long one at that. And so during that time, they're going to be in a testnet phase. So we're talking about a very long test net, and we're talking about a very long runway until it's actually usable, which means in the course of that time, I mean, we've just seen how Ren got scrapped and was turned to WebAssembly in the course of less than a month. Trying to make any decisions at this stage are really, really useless. So, because it could be something completely different by the end of the year. So we're, the fact is that we're probably looking at a year until we see something that actually launches that's actually usable. And then after that, we would have to assess where BitShares is at that time, because I really hate the idea that we're going to be sitting on our hands for the next year waiting for EOS. I think that there's a lot of improvements that can be made with BitShares in itself. We've got a really good price now with a huge amount that could be done with workers. And so I think we need to look at what elements of BitShares that we can improve now, and then look at the EOS question. I think maybe about not an entire year, but maybe sometime like 9 months until it starts to get more mature, and then we can start looking at options. But as far as the 3 options are concerned, I'm all for option 1 at this stage, at the way things look, because just a minor modification would do the trick.
And I definitely agree with the idea about focusing on what is on not sitting on our hands. And the only reason I think I brought this up for today is because if option 2 were very desirable in terms of a full port over, then considering the current fundraising, then it might be, that would be the only reason to perhaps very quickly and to possibly participate in the fundraising. So I think that was the reason that I brought it up for today.
Well, I'll tell you right now, this kind of changes my way of looking at things, because, of course, you make a very good point about it taking a year. When we go back to look at the evolution of BitShares, there are so many changes that seemed like, that they were so traumatizing at the time, because they were considered big changes. And hold on a second here. They were big changes, and change in general for people is not necessarily what they like to see ever, even if it's a change that makes sense, right? And those types of things did pop up quite frequently, and we've obviously found that it's an evolution, and sometimes you almost have to just almost completely rebuild certain parts of these ecosystems. So it'll be very interesting to see what it evolves into in a year, and I wonder if that's maybe why they gave themselves that long of a runway. But with respect to BitShares, it does make total sense to me going with the side chain, just because it's easier. It's something that can be done, and we can test things with it if there's a test net, and probably going to be I'm assuming it would be a little bit cheaper if we already have that, if we already have an idea as to how we're going to do it. Do you know, Taco, if there's a way that people have in mind of doing the side chain?
I have heard that I've heard or rumored that Xerox has an idea, and that's all I know.
Okay. Because it says here modify BitShares block header, but that, of course, is going to be, well, to my knowledge, that would be the only way of side chaining, right?
Yeah, I think yes, that's what I've heard about it. Yeah, and I've also just pasted in what were a brief summary of some pros and cons of that idea, and these are ideas again not prepared by me, but prepared by, I think, either Xerox or Elmato. And roughly the idea is, some of the pros are, at the moment, as we currently see it, easy, less intrusive, and here it's listing low performance. But I think perhaps that is I guess I get the idea. I think why this type of integration, my suspicion of what is meant here, is that the number of transactions that could be synchronized with the EOS chain might have a decent amount of latency. So that would be my guess of what's meant by this. And also the other perhaps con or limitation, let's say, is that with this type of integration, there would only allow two-way transfers of user-issued assets or BTS but not bit assets. Let's say like BitUSD, for example.
It seems like it's not necessarily a bad thing starting out, but
yeah, I mean, I think it does provide a lot to go to start with, and I think Stan brought up a point, and the gist of it was, and I've lost track of it, but the gist of it was it's good to be able to plant a flag and send a message out there that in this case BitShares is preparing to integrate.
How would you guys, Talkinator, do you have any people that would like to do this, or are you preparing to do it as far as the proposal and writing it up?
I have not actually talked about writing this up with anyone else, but I know other people have been talking about it. So I'm happy to at least begin corralling and trying to identify people who would be willing to assist with this.
That'd be awesome if you could form like a little crew just to keep inform the public about it and write about it. Because one of the things that I don't think that a lot of people really understand, well, maybe they understand it, but sometimes we kind of need to be reminded, is that bringing content to people is an extremely valuable way of teaching them. And what we have in the tool that Steam offers and all the other chains that could be made from it, is that we have a way of actually paying people to create content and teach. Some people teach, some people learn differently. And that's why having a spectrum of different kinds of content surrounding a subject allows the person who's searching for the answer to find what meshes best with them, what enables them to overcome the barriers of learning and motivate them to get past that. And when you find a person who you just so happen to every bit of content that they create connects with you, and you connect with that person, now you have a guru, like a tutor, a mentor type of situation. And in psychology, they call this stuff scaffolding, right? It's the concept of, whenever you see baby monkeys, they even do this. They will learn from their parents by watching their parents. And if you it works all over the place, right? But this is the type of synergy that we can create and actually also pay for it. So I also want to urge everybody here, if you have Steam Power, please consider upvoting these Hangouts. Please consider re-steaming them. And if you know somebody who's doing good work and not getting paid for it, let them know that we can pay them for talking about what they're doing in this in BitShares ecosystem. This is something that I would really like to work on with you, Talkinator. So I think we can talk behind the scenes a little bit more about it.
Sure.
If you're okay with it. And
absolutely.
I think that I would really love, you don't have to, man, but I would really love to see you writing these thoughts out so newbies can read them. They're going to learn from you. They're going to learn that they can trust you. And none of this is bad. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it definitely helps flesh out the ideas. And learning oneself also as they write out the ideas. So yeah.
Cool, buddy. Okay, that sounds good. Does anybody have any input on this? Because you know that I have input. There are other people here who are nerds who are thinking a lot about various stuff that's going on in the ecosystem. I know that all of you guys who are BitShares, early BitShares people, are looking at EOS. So what are your thoughts on it? Do you have any thoughts on what we're talking about here?
I love the fact that you've whet our appetites about the different things that we should be looking at or that are being talked about and stuff, so we know what we're going to be looking for or waiting to hear more about. I just have a quick question about time. Is there any other segments that we're having during this thing? Because I see that we're coming up close to the next Hangout. So
no, this today is a Hangout that it's a little bit different because I was gonna do the open source agenda completely just like that, but then I realized that we've had the blank slate kind of thing for a while, and we can still keep that, but we need to start framing it. Now that I have tools to get stuff done, I can start shaping and molding the steel into a sword. So I want to pay people to do that, and I can do it now. And I don't have to power down my Steam power. And those of you who see what I do with the money, you should consider supporting me in any way, shape, or form you can, because these tools are really being built for everybody here, and we have just the basics started right now. But we also, it's something that I have to find a way to get our community to tackle. Is we have all this funding for BitShares, and it's a damn shame that people aren't able to use it to, or that we're not really paying people like SVK should not have to worry about a worker proposal having to be voted in again and going and rallying the troops. We should be there saying, hey, as a community, we're going to support you. And if we can get paid for it and I can pay you guys for doing that stuff, it's stupid for me not to, right? So leverage what I've got, help me to get the funding to continue building, and try to help Talkinator and all the people who step up here, because it's not easy to do all this stuff. But the people who do it, generally they either see a huge profit or they care. And whenever you find people who would do it for free, and I think Talkinator is one of them, we want to start using what we've got to support them and get this stuff done.
What is the incentive? I know what the incentive is supposed to be, but what is the incentive for people to actively pay attention to what they're voting on, checking on voting and stuff like that? It almost seems like it's a voluntary effort to use your BitShares stake to vote for workers or to keep on top of them, while a lot of people just like owning BitShares and just like letting it ride idle all the time. I don't know if there's something that we can do to encourage it, whether it be the recognition of who's voting and who's not, or something like that along those lines, so that if somebody's not participating, it becomes very visible, or we recognize those that are participating in voting more. There's got to be some way of showing inclusion and abandonment of participating in the BitShares development worker proposal system.
I like some ideas that we have. One of which, of course, SVK has made it a little bit easier to make worker proposals and stuff. But like you're saying, the problem is we're supposed to want to vote actively on projects to make the value of the token go up. But voter apathy still exists on a ridiculous level, right? Is that what you're pretty much saying? And how do we motivate that and change that motivation?
Yeah, if I had to just pick statistics out of my butt, I would probably say
7%. But
7% of the BitShares network is actively voting for and tracking worker proposals, while 93% just sits idle with the token.
Yeah, I have an idea about that we can maybe talk about sometime, but I'll just really quickly summarize it as I always thought that if you let somebody proxy vote for you, they should earn a small amount of tokens for doing it, and maybe you pay that fee. And that gives you an incentive to make sure that they're not screwing around, but they also want to get that fee from you. So they're going to be very transparent, and they're going to be competitions of people who want to be more transparent than the other person, so they can be a proxy because they get a little bit of extra benefit for voting and being a proxy for people, right? And then you just basically have proxy competitions, and that's great because it's a free market where you don't have like, oh, this person did X, Y, and Z, and now they have to go in front of Congress, and Congress is going to slap their wrist, and there's going to be a Coke can that's going to be advertising at the same time, and in front of the representative, and they never get in trouble. And then no, you get voted out because the community thinks that you're a bag of crap for some reason, right?
I think a good example of that is what we're seeing with Steam witnesses. There's a lot of witnesses in Steam, but they always, like somebody like Tim Cliff or somebody will post like this big long update of everything he's done in the last 2 weeks. And I think we should see more of that in BitShares, on the BitShares forum or something, or on a BitShares version of a Steam post.
Hello?
Surpassing Google?
Yeah, your mic is on all the time. We can hear you now, Surpassing Google, but you need to have push to talk enabled because your mic is hot all the time.
Yep. But it's okay. You can take the time. What I urge everybody who's in here who wants to everybody who's in here who wants to talk, I urge you setting it up testing it with a friend and making sure that you've got it all set up before the Hangouts. If you have problems, you can reach me on the WhaleShares Discord, which is where you're going to see me quite often from now on. Or that's at least where I'm going to be checking my messages like on a multiple time per day basis. But whenever you're in here, just to make it a little bit higher quality, none of us are using hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. But just to make it easier on yourself, enabling push to talk, having something that aren't external speakers plugged in, something closer to like headset or headphones, along with a mic. Those are the types of things that will help you guys in here. So just real quick plug of that kind of public service announcement here. And to get back into what we were talking about, we're at about 57 minutes in. So if there's anything that anybody would like to wrap up with outside of that, I'm more than willing to, let you do so. But I will say, IntelliGuy, I think it's something we should definitely talk about. And I actually have thought, what if proxies were also committee? I don't know. These are things that I would like to discuss at some point in time. And maybe this is something we can discuss at the next Hangout. But I will also tell everybody here, if you have a proxy, urge them to come on. Let's focus on bringing these people together. Or you can add Brownie Distro, which is my account, as a proxy. And I will try to take into consideration everything that the community brings and everything that the community thinks here. Maybe we can have a voting tool and stuff, and we can publish the votes. But we can come up with some things that can help this process along. And now that I have the resources, not just funding, but people, we have this amazing group in the WhaleShares Discord that are always like trying to help. And it's only growing. So they're the real gold. Wait until they come online and really start helping and seeing value in helping for themselves. But anybody else have any information or thoughts or anything they'd like to close on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so it's my first time joining Mumble. I'm a steamer from Turkey, and the Turkish community is just starting to grow, and I'm believing in this community because there are so many things you can develop on top of this community, since it's a lot of communication going on between people, interesting content is being shared. So I initially started I convinced a friend of mine to open a shop on Steemit to sell underwear in exchange of Steam dollars and SBD. In the future, I'm planning of maybe doing something like couch surfing, because people are, people know each other through this system and they can trust each other more. Next step could be Workaway, where you can go
read
to...
more. I just want to let you know, if you're thinking this is the Beyond Bitcoin Hangout, this isn't the Beyond Bitcoin Hangout yet. That will be after. And I do want you to come and talk about this. But I will say this. Anywhere that I find things that are going on in Steam, I love to bring them to the BitShares community too. Because if you haven't noticed, you have noticed, obviously, but a lot of people, they think that WhaleShares and what we're doing using the BitShares chain is like evil and it's hurting Steam. But I can tell just by the community that we've built already and all the quality content that they're creating that we're one of the brightest shining stars in Steam, and we use BitShares. So I leverage BitShares every way I can because it's a hell of a tool that's underestimated. And if you think that your friend would like to talk about potentially working with the BitShares community in ways, I think that having BitShares lingerie or BitShares underwear might work out. So maybe you can sign up for a worker proposal or something to get a couple of them made to show people and then see if it would be a good business decision for you guys to start a product line about it or something. I don't know, but maybe we can talk about some of that stuff in the future if you're cool with it.
Yeah, we can do that. They have their own textile factory basically, so there's lots of flexibility.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and let's get ready for the Beyond Bitcoin Hangout, which will be in about 5 minutes. But we will go ahead and talk about that there if you're good with it. Now, you did do a good job. It's just not quite the right time. Cool?
Yes, I wasn't
Okay.
aware that this was BitShares basically. So
It's okay. You gotta
Yeah.
you gotta learn somehow, right?
yes, that's the point. All right, thanks for the reply, and I'll join you in the whale shares too.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Well, everyone, I will just say this to close off this week's session. I'm glad to see that we're going to start talking about some of this stuff. That we're going to have maybe some updates in next week's hangout. And I want to urge everyone to consider reaching out to your proxy and, at the very least, ask them to listen to these hangouts. And I'm not trying to say be hard on them, but hold their feet to the fire to make sure that the people who are wanting to bring value to the ecosystem are heard and paid attention to, and that we can show it. Because showing it on these hangouts is a lot better than talking about speculation in things that we have no control over. We do have control. And all we have to do is grab it back from the situations whenever they get out of hand. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. And I urge you all to join me. And I thank all of those who already have. We will see you next week, as we always do. And I look forward to it.